Roth, and welcome to my video about rhythm guitar and rhythm and blues styles. In case we haven't met, how you doing? And in case we have met on some of my previous videos, it's good to see you out there again. We're going to be talking today about a lot of different styles and mostly the importance of rhythm guitar as a tool that a lead guitarist can use, because these days mostly all guitar players are involved in single note work and a lot of fast playing, and there just doesn't seem to be enough of an emphasis on the earlier styles, the founding fathers of rock guitar and rhythm and blues guitar and those styles. So we'll be talking about some of those kinds of players as well, like Steve Cropper and Cornell Dupree and those kinds of guitar players. And first we should get in tune together before we get on with all our work. So let's start with the high E string. Then the B. G. D. A. And low E. Okay, assuming that you're in tune, we can get going. Now, when I first started playing the guitar, obviously I started by playing rhythm guitar. That's usually how most players begin. And I really enjoyed it for a long period of time before I became a lead player. And I was listening to a lot of the early blues players and a lot of guys like Chuck Berry and, of course, the Beatles, who were influenced, obviously, by those people. And Chuck Berry licks, the shuffle licks, are something that everybody should know. And a lot of you probably do know it to a certain degree, but don't play it enough or don't play it properly. There's an open position and closed position way of playing them. And they involve a fair amount of left hand and right hand damping to get clean, because you're only dealing with two strings at a time. For example, if you're going to play something in open position, now based on your A chord, you've got this bar, this partial bar. So now I'm simply pressing down the second fret on the D string and getting this. Now I switch it to the next string for the D chord. Back to A. Now low E. D. And A. Now you can also throw in a little seventh there, like this. That kind of position deals mostly with a very simple, repetitious kind of thing where it goes back and forth and you're playing the same two notes of each given chord. When you get into the closed positions, it becomes a little bit tougher, and the stretches become tougher, but you're going for a different sound. The choice of the strings here makes a different tonality. Instead of the twangier open strings, we now have the fatter sounding closed strings on the left hand there. So this is how it would be for A. Now move it over for D. Now your E can be up here on the 7th fret. You can also throw in your low E string as well to get a fuller sound. Of course, that's sort of like a blues, straight-ahead blues shuffle feel, sort of like what Jimmy Reed used to play. When Chuck Berry would play the stuff, it would become more up-tempo and more of a driving sound. that kind of thing you can see has more of a driving sound and requires more of a relaxed right hand to do it. The right hand is the key to rhythm guitar playing. It really is. I'm a firm believer in keeping it as relaxed as possible and actually thinking like a drummer with the right hand, because you have to accent certain notes, you have to make certain things very clear. For example, in the kind of thing when I was playing in the opening lick, where I was playing this sort of pattern. You can actually hear the drum beat there, you can actually hear the kinds of accents and whacks I'm giving the strings. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later, because I think most people tend to, if you read a part like that and you look in a book, you'll just see it as... It's not so simple. It's not just as simple as sort of fitting into a particular part within a band, you know, and just playing that part. You got to be able to make the music on your own. You should be able to pick up the guitar and, in a soloistic sense, play the whole piece if you want to. Because, you know, guitar is that kind of instrument. You can let strings ring and you can let all kinds of good stuff happen. So, getting back to the shuffle lick, it's a lick that I like to play a lot, which I call the harmony shuffle, like this. It's actually the same lick we had before, only now you're harmonizing with a two-note pattern. Now the first part of it and the third part look the same. It's in the middle where we switch and go to the first finger and the third finger. So it looks like this. Now that's for E. You've got little nuances there too. These little subtle nuances are very important to throw in, like a little hammer-on here. And now the last one has a slide. That's an old blues technique right there, just to give it a real trill. That's good when you're actually attacking and accenting that particular note. Now for A, it has to involve a partial bar of the A chord, so we play it like this. Back to E. And the other good one, there's actually a couple more, but the good one down here is also for D, which goes like this. Always maintaining that high D note on the B string. If you wanted to maintain that same A note for the A chord, you just have to make a stretch like that. Of course, you've got the damping going on for the D string. Now, so what's happening in the E chord is, or the E7th chord actually, is this finger is stopping the D string as it moves up, sort of moves on that track and keeps it deadened in the middle. So that way, with a pick, you can play the notes and not have to play all of them. So those kinds of things are very important to keep in mind. I mean, when you're playing the guitar, one of the things people always ask me is how you get a certain sound so clean, or how you get a certain lick or chord. And basically, there's as much silent work going on as there is audible work. There's a lot of damping, and it's kind of a hard thing to explain. It's something that kind of comes about once you've got your positions and everything really, really down, to then incorporate it. It just comes naturally because you want to get a sound cleaner. You know, like in bending a string. There's just so much that has to be eliminated. The electric guitar is the kind of instrument where you have to kind of control it, as opposed to an acoustic guitar. If you played rhythm on an acoustic guitar, which I'm sure many of you have, so you'd have to really drive it and try to project a lot of sound out of the instrument. Well, on an electric guitar, it's more a question of controlling it. That's why I was talking about rhythm guitar the way a lead guitarist would approach it. You know, sometimes it's just little licks that are actually rhythm licks. So that's the kind of thing that we're going to be talking about a lot on this video. Of course, getting back to the founding fathers of guitar, I mean, what would rhythm guitar be without, or rock guitar be without the Bo Diddley lick, about the most simple thing in the world, but it just sounds great, and a lot of songs have been based on it. It's just a very simple right-hand pattern, which is like... I love that rhythm. It's just a really driving, you know, primitive kind of rock and roll rhythm, and he started, of course, and it's become his trademark ever since, the Bo Diddley lick. So just work on that, but again, don't make it sound like... Let your right hand be free, and let the left hand squeeze the chord, actually. The chord just when you want it to be sounded. That's one of the keys. Just get the left hand and right hand working together and you'll be in business. Now, getting on to some later sort of blues styles that I learned. I used to listen to guys like Mike Bloomfield and people like that who would, of course, listen to earlier blues players as well, such as B.B. King and Otis Rush. And they have a lot of these really nice sort of ninth chord blues licks. Okay, let's break that down a little bit. What happens with that lick is we're taking the top part of a ninth chord, which I like to play in this way, with my pinky doing the barring as opposed to this. A lot of people play it that way, and I find that kind of closed, particularly since the chord is based on a C form, then going to a C7 form, and then eventually becoming a ninth form, simply by laying that finger across. So it has sort of its anatomy and history built right into it there. But what we do is we slide those top three notes. When you're in A, you're playing based on this ninth chord. And then you slide these three notes up. That's the old Memphis lick. That's a famous lick that was, you know, made well known by Lonnie Mack and, of course, Chuck Berry. Catch that high note on top. So when I first heard that lick, as you can see, it's a nice kind of thing to throw in, and the first time I heard it, it was very easy to pick up off of the record. But I didn't know it was part of any given chord. I just thought when he went to the 4 chord, he did this. So for a bunch of years, I didn't even know it was part of the 9th chord, but now I found out later on, and so I'm passing it on to you. But that's one of the sort of classic blues sort of licks. And then, you know, out of that style, then you start getting into the funkier stuff, the stuff that I was talking about where the right hand becomes really important in its rhythmic approach. I like to think of the right hand as being the drums. I mean, it's like actually playing drum parts. If you listen, you can hear the cymbal, the kick drum, and especially the snare. Okay, what we're doing there is simply picking out the chords just when we want them to be rung, and that enables us, even though the chord's being hit on the offbeat, to be able to hit some of those whacks on the actual, you know, 2 and 4 of the measure. So here we're playing this lick. It's basically a little gospel rockabilly type thing, where you're barring on the 5th fret on the D, G, and B string, and hammering on with your major third. So we're going. So it's a quick rocking back and forth between A7 and D. Then when we go to our 4 chord, which is this C7 form of D7, we have a little walk-up lick, what I call a walk-up lick. The same thing. So let's try that now. Try first getting into the groove, the actual pattern of it. So the high strings are your snare. Then start picking it out. Okay, what I'm doing there, and what I threw in, is that while you've got your pattern going, you can actually make it become a straight double-time rockabilly gospel lick. It's like at the end of a gospel tune, when everybody starts going into double time, you know, clapping it, and instead of the 2 and the 4, actually clapping, I guess, on, what is it? Actually on the 1 and the 3, whatever it is. Whatever it is, it becomes sort of like a doubling of the actual pattern. So instead of this pattern, with your right hand, you've got this now. It's kind of tricky at first. You should try practicing it so you go from one to the other, like this. Okay, now that technique also works really well in something that I've been preaching for years, not that that's tied in with gospel music, but I've been preaching this on a guitar anyway, is the pick and finger approach, where I get into the ability to be able to get more control out of it and actually play constant bass notes sometimes. So sometimes I'll play that lick like this. Okay, so it's pick and two fingers. I'm actually keeping a constant bass going. It's going to take some time to get this independent, so first get your pattern going. So that's something that once you get the pattern going, then you could start feeling free to throw in other licks as well, like this. Okay, the key there is just to be able to stay in good time and keep that pulse going, you know, even when you stop. Just keep thinking about that time and you'll be able to get it. And again, the pick is playing here. The heel of your hand is doing some damping, and you're just using those two fingers, the third and the second and third, to kind of grab those notes on top, like. It's important to not bend towards you because you'll cut out your string, your droning open A string, so you have to bend away from you in this case. And you could work with a shuffle pattern. It's an easy pattern to work with because you can get two on the bottom and three on top. Get that triplet going. Okay, so that's based on the pattern of obviously playing a three-note triplet on top and a two-note or dotted eighth note pattern on the bottom. Once they're locked in, then you can go off on tangents and try and get something happening. So, you know, that's, again, that's up to you, and that's up to your own personal development. With a tape like this, you've got the ability to stop it, rewind, keep working on parts until you get something right. So hopefully that's what you'll do, and you'll use it to its full max. All right, one of the biggest things that I like to talk about and like to do in rhythm guitar is throwing in those little fills that make it so interesting. Now, these are kinds of things that I listened to growing up, and I'd hear it on records like Booker T and the MGs or Otis Redding, stuff that Steve Cropper would play, also stuff that Cornell Dupree played with King Curtis and Aretha Franklin and players like that. And that's kind of a real important part of R&B rhythm guitar, is that ability to throw in little things and get right back to the rhythm. Now this kind of lick, this E7 lick that we've got here, it's kind of a funky Broadway lick. In fact, we're recording this on funky Broadway right now as we speak, so this is really authentic. What you have is a sound that's really simulating the way a horn section would work. Ba-ba-da-bam-ba-da. Let's throw in higher things. Okay, that, just to break down that little high lick there that I'm doing, it's an old blues lick that a lot of players throw in R&B playing, and what you're doing is you're bending up from the minor third to the major third on the B string while maintaining your fifth on the 7th fret of the high E string. So, that stinging tone by releasing your hand and just kind of holding the pick loosely and just getting a whack, like a down up. Get even more of a sting if you start it with this, with your third finger, 2 frets up, and pull off precisely at the time that you bend it. I'm just simply going to the D7 form of A, which is on the 9th fret there, sliding it like horn players. This brings to mind a really great lick, which was from Memphis Soul Stew, played by King Curtis, and the guitar player was Cornell Dupree. And he had a lick. The song would kind of build, and you'd hear one musician at a time coming in. And when the guitar player would come in, Cornell, he'd play this. so let's take that double note lick on top together here and see how it goes. Now, once I've reached this point, it could also be up here. It depends on the kind of sound you want. So, right to your downbeat. You've got your low E string, and then you've got your second octave of E right next to it there on the 7th fret of the A string. So you can play with that. You get that nice octave effect there. And that little bend lick on top. Nice loose right hand lick that concentrates mostly on the middle strings because we're dealing with a 4-note chord here. Notice when I let the E string ring, my thumb on the left hand clears it. Then it stops it just in time to actually play the rest of the lick. There's a lot of damping going on here. This finger is lightly touching the high E string, so that's out. So the damping is crucial even in a lick like this. That stops just in time. So that's a nice lick to have some fun with, that sort of Memphis Soul Stew, Cornell Dupree lick. And in a similar style, Steve Cropper used to play things on more of a downbeat-oriented type of phrasing that he used to play with, like Otis Redding and Wilson Pickett and guys like that. Anything that came out of Memphis had that kind of sound. And that was more of a... Very often the lead guitar part on those kinds of records is very minimal, very, very minimal. It still becomes an extension of the rhythm playing. So there, if you're right hand, if you're thinking in terms of the drum parts again, it's just the way the drummer would attack it. I don't know, us guitar players, we're all frustrated drummers. I try to do that on the drums and forget about it, but it works great on the guitar. So be a drummer on your guitar and you'll be very happy with this kind of style. One of the guys also who did a lot of great playing in this style was a guy named Jimmy Nolan, who played with James Brown for a long time. And when you think of James Brown and you're a guitar player, right away you think in terms of really funky single note licks with very little going on. Very minimal stuff where you're just fitting in as part of the band. Something like this. That would be going on while some very, very lazy bass line would be happening and something else on the drums, and it's just a question of locking in. That's a really good a good thing to practice with with another band. Just like try to find a part and stick with it. Just stick with that part and let it be an integral part of the overall pattern. I mean, it worked great with reggae groups. You hear that a lot in reggae guitar, like. With just those little stamped licks, and what I'm doing there is I'm simply laying the heel of my hand just across the bottom of the strings and just tapping the low one. Just cutting out the initial twang of it. I guess you can see that there. It's just right down there. Heel damping. Very, very important in this kind of style, especially since you can create a big difference, a big gap in sound between this and the high notes you're letting ring, totally true. And I'm digging in with the pick, so I'm getting some of that false harmonic kind of sound. On the high notes, where I'm running down in sort of a triplet pattern, that's a down, up, down on the G string. And I'm actually following the notes. Instead of fretting them, and I'm not going. It's not that simple. You actually do have to hear the notes stamped. And on the high E string, I actually pluck upward with my thumb first and then the pick. And you get a little bit of a harmonic ring there. On your treble pickup or a bridge pickup, you'll hear it more strongly. That's a technique you should really try and keep in mind that is a harmonic actually being created by the upstroke. It's a very unusual thing. Most people play it down like that, but I'm coming up. So even though it sounds like a lot of lead playing, it's still rhythm playing. It's still acting as a rhythm guitarist within the context of a band, and that's the key. And you can throw in those little horn-type parts now and then. Now, also, I've always been a big fan of some of the simpler rhythm parts, the beautifully poetic parts that used to be played on the Otis Redding type stuff and Sam Cooke type things. Sam Cooke, his guitar player was Bobby Womack, and of course, on the Otis Redding things, it was Steve Cropper, and he would always play these nice arpeggios. So it's very simple there. You just have the subtle nuance of the little slides. Getting that pickup there. Sometimes you hit a little suspended fourth lick. when you're playing in that kind of technique, you've got a lot of nice things that you can throw in on top. These little hammer-ons, sort of a Memphis, Nashville kind of sound. So that's just hammering quick to the 4 chord and then back down. Or those kinds of things. And all these little double note slides like this. In fact, it's a good idea just to know that run like this. Those harmonies. Sometimes I just like to play around with them within the pentatonic box pattern like this. Very much the Bobby Womack type of Sam Cooke sound. Bring It On Home to Me, those kinds of songs. That's also a real useful pattern that you have, a good position for sort of a lead rhythm kind of approach, which is these little hammer-ons from the G position or A position to your actual, it's like a C form, but you're using just these 3 notes. Sometimes if I'm playing something funky, I'll even throw it in over an A chord in the form of a G chord, like. That's a good lick to practice right there, just that. So again, that's you know, it blends styles. That becomes a little bit of a rock thing. It can become a very beautiful country thing if you wanted to. Or the harder thing. That kind of effect. Important to try and mix it up, try and get those techniques together, single note and rhythm. Your hands are going to have to, you know, think differently, because you're going to have to commit your hand, the whole hand, to a bend note or a vibrato note, and then come back to a chord. So you have to be able to do those sort of things. So, for example, if you're suddenly going to bend a note, well, you got to get that whole position together there, where the thumb comes over. You've got 3 fingers helping to bend, including this finger, which is actually pushing the other strings out of the way, and your index finger is damping back there. So you could just whack that guitar from anywhere and have one clean note. Same thing when you return. You don't want to get all those clanging notes when you return. When you return, you want it to be nice and smooth like that. So. That's just a 2-note, you know, 1-note bend with 1 note on top. That lick is simply playing your A chord and bending up with the G on the low E string up 2 frets. You've got a whole chord ringing there. Okay, while we're also on the subject of string bending, and there's one lick here that I really want to show you, which is one of my all-time favorites. When I'm playing a rhythm position or pattern, as opposed to just bending 1 note, or even 2, or even 3, I like to bend whole chords. And what it is a 9th chord position. So here it is in context. Okay, so what I'm doing there is I'm actually taking this position of the 9th, which is no longer a bar, and I'm playing it with 4 fingers and just pulling up first and then letting it bend down and shaking it with some vibrato to give it some more sustain. There's your A9 chord. Now E9. You go walk chromatically with the bend. So bend, release, slide. It's almost a blues lick in itself, and what I like to do is my tapping harmonics with it. Now this chord, you can't get all the notes, but say you go 12 frets above, which would be the 17th fret. Just with your right hand, tap over those frets. Your index finger, right over the metal fret, not in the wooden part, but over the metal. With the treble pickup, you'll hear it even more strongly. So that's a nice technique, and just throw it in. You know, when I play out at the end of this video, you'll hear a lot of that kind of playing. And again, I hope you've enjoyed this video. We're going to have to sign off now, and there's a lot of material to cover. I felt like I could have gone on for hours and hours. There's so much to focus in on. So I think it's really important to remember to try and think of yourself as a lead player playing rhythm guitar with a lot of these pieces and these kinds of parts, and try to lock in with players a lot as well. Check out some of our other videos. We also have a little practice tape called Hot Tracks that's really good to play with, to work on some of these parts with it. And that's got everything from country to blues to reggae on it, so you could practice a lot of different techniques. And I've enjoyed doing it for you today here, and hope to see you maybe out there on the road, if not, on another video. So take care and bye-bye.